Can we get a roll call, please?
Jason Crumba,
Here.
Ann McCaffrey,
Here.
Ryan Mahoney.
Here.
Also in attendance, we have Mark Lonesi, Mark Ruby, William Feckerty, Andrea Kleizek, Mike Dudley, Susan Barone, Julie Lamoureux, Jeremy Gertz, and Mark Gabriel, Agency Counsel via phone.
Hi, Mark via phone.
I hope that's it.
Good morning, Jason, via person.
Good morning. All right, first up, you have agency payables from the period of September 1st to September 30th. Yeah. Jeremy Gertz got a check for $90.78. Hope you enjoyed it. Right, piggy bank. Any questions or comments with regards to agency payables? With that, can I get a motion to approve as presented?
I'll make a motion.
I will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Budget variance reports would be next. Year-to-date variance is 337,000, I believe, to the positive. Yes. Any questions or comments regarding the budget variance report? Mark, a question?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were reading it. I apologize. All right, can I get a motion to accept as presented?
Make motion.
I will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. And project closing summary, Mr. Gabriel.
Thank you, Mr. Trumpa. As of now, there have been no new closings, between last meeting and today. There has finally been a little bit of motion on 2 or 3 of the, already induced projects. It looks as though, at least from discussing with council for 2 of them, the ability to get financing is loosening up a little bit. It's becoming, the interest rates are getting to a level where it's starting to move some of these projects around, moving it forward. I do anticipate MGA construction to close within the next 30 to 45 days. In addition, I've had some good discussions with the Hotel Niagara developer, so I'm waiting to hear back from them that they are anxious to start to move forward before the winter to try to get the project moving into enclosed, for safety purposes, the existing building. So that would be my report for this one. Thank you.
Wonderful. And we don't have to approve the project closing report, do we?
No.
I was gonna say that. Okay. With that, I will hand it over to Mr. Dudley to talk about our proposed budgets.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So our goal this morning is to review the 3 required budgets, and then make a recommendation to the full board after this meeting. From that point, once approved by the board, it'll go to the county for its mandatory 20-day review. And then the following month, on November 13th, at our next board meeting, we'll officially adopt the budgets, which then will be reported in the Office of the State Controller's Harris system, which is Public Authorities Reporting Information System. So we do have 3 different entities that will be approving budgets on: the NADC, the Niagara Area Development Corporation, which is your first item on top of your pile there. The Niagara County Development Corporation, or otherwise known as the NCDC, and then our main operating budget for the NCIDA. So we'll start off with the simplest one, being the NADC. And you'll see just how simple that is. This is an entity that was created just to allow us to provide interest-free bonds or bond issuances to not-for-profit entities. We haven't had much activity in the last couple of years, as you can see. So I throw something in there, so I just threw in there, maybe we get an application for $1,000 application fee for next year. I did the same thing last year and we didn't have any, which is not uncommon. So it's hit or miss with those.
Sorry, Mike, I don't mean to interrupt you, but Mark can't hear you, so I'm moving him down.
Right, you should have been here.
I would like nothing more to be there, Mike.
Like, does it have a bank account or it's just,
There is a bank.
there is a bank account?
Yeah. So there's like $500 sitting
Yeah.
in it.
Okay.
It's usually money in, money out. All the profit gets transferred to the IDA anyway. So
I'm,
yeah, there's no real assets.
yeah.
So does anybody have any questions on this budget? Okay.
And just for informational purposes, sorry to jump in, the NADC, again, as Mike mentioned, was developed as a local development corporation by the agency, my goodness, pushing 15 years ago or so. And the reason behind it was what was called the Civic Facilities Legislation, which forbid agencies within itself and its main purpose to provide not-for-profits bonding capabilities. So what basically every IDA in the state did is to set up these local development corporations, which allow the agency, and in this case, its subsidiary, the NADC, to provide bond financing to some of these other not-for-profit groups, such as Opportunities Unlimited, hospitals, colleges, universities, things like that. So just as a background, it wanted to
It's
make sure.
helpful. Thank you.
And it cannot be used for anything else.
So it's kind of a placeholder. If something comes up, we've got it. If we don't need it, it can just sit there kind of dormant.
That's exactly it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. You feel free to jump in at any time. Okay, the next entity would be the NAD or NCDC, excuse me. This is the another subsidiary of the NCIDA, and this is the entity that takes care of our loan portfolios and what we run, all of our different grants that we might run through this fund as well. So there's actually two documents there. One is a 2024 forecasted income statement, and then the 2025 proposed budget. We don't really need to go through the forecast. It's just there to lay out to show you the different funds that are in the NCDC. There's the original EDA grant that we had. There's still a portfolio in there. And the next column is the EDA 2020 grant revolving fund. That's the latest grant that we got about 4 years ago. And then there's a HUD revolving loan fund that only has a few remaining loans, and then the micro enterprise revolving loan fund that actually only has 2 loans left in it. At one point, several years ago, there was over 40 loans in there.
Is this the consultants? Is this what we run the harassment group for?
That and Mark and yes, that and Mark,
Okay.
which we've been, as Sue Barone will tell you, but she's the one administering these grants. And she's been doing a lot of the work that they would have been doing. So we've been able to keep the administrative fees for ourselves instead of paying them out to Sycamore.
Those are, I'm sorry, not yours.
Right, Sue?
Yes.
Yep. Does anybody have any questions on the 2024 forecast and income statement? So the real thing that we're looking at is the budget, the 25 budget, which is what we'll need to recommend to the full board for approval. And again, it gets reported into the Paris system. So that's just laid out with the last year's budget.
I'm sorry, real quick. How did you on the grant income, the 735,000?
Yeah,
how did we come up with that number?
Two?
So those are through OCR grants.
Yeah,
And
those are the ocean.
the way they're structured, they are oftentimes split between a loan and a grant. And when the loan funds are repaid, they're repaid to the agency. So, I mean, these are ongoing grants that we do every year, so we have income, basically income from these grants.
You know, okay, I was just curious as to how, I mean, if we're looking at in 2024, we budgeted 976 and we're forecasting 580. I'm just curious what a 735 came from.
Because we're looking at grants and then we're estimating, in
Okay.
process and what their repayment's gonna be and when they think they can repay us.
Okay, that's right, that's just curious.
Anyone have any questions? Okay, so we can move on to the next item, which would be the red covered page. This is a 5-year comparative income statement, excuse me, this is our main operating fund for the NCIDA. So as you can see, it's just laid out income and expense, and it goes all the way back to 2019. Comparatively, you can see we have ups and downs in our project fees earned. Could be pretty big at sometimes, and the lowest point was in 2020 during the COVID experience. Last year we had 790, almost 800,000. There was two, if you'll remember, we had two big bond issues to the one group. So that was the bulk of that. There's a lot of.
Jason, if I could.
Go ahead.
The reason why this is a very important document, we have been doing this for the last 15 to 18 years. As Michael mentioned, there's very little way of really calculating what project income may or may not be coming in the door for a specific year. As you can tell, there's substantial peaks and valleys over a period of time. So what the board adopted some time ago was what we would do is do a 5-year comparison. We take those numbers, which I'll let Mike explain afterwards, basically add them together and come up with an average over the last 5 years, and that's how later on you'll see where we've come up with our projected 2025 income. You know, is it a exact science? No, but decades ago, without, maybe 3-4 executive directors ago, it could be, I don't want to say abused, but certainly not give you a good number to match the, that person may have tried to match the expenses they were trying to spend that year with a projected income, which was really unrealistic. Here, we keep this as a very realistic, defendable, at the very least, guesstimate of what we anticipate our project revenues to be for any given year. Sometimes we're a little below, sometimes we're a little high, but overall it kind of smooths everything out.
Thank you. So they say the last 5 years performance, and then the last column is what are forecasted through the end of this year, which is our next document, is the forecast for 2024. So what I do is I start out with inputting how we look at as of June 30th, and then estimate the performance through the end of the year. So if we're done with this 5-year comparative, we can go to the next document, the purple cover. (2024) forecasted income statement. As I said, I started out with our actual, through June 30th. And then analyze all the expenses, and income for that period of time and look back at last year's, how we performed in the second half of last year. And then make an educated estimate of how we'll finish through the end of, this year. We had a couple of, people retire this year, so that took a big, chunk out of our salaries line under expenses there. There's a lot of detail there. And backup behind it. Not necessarily for you, but for me, I do a very thorough analysis of all the accounts, every single account. Just so I can try to come up with a good estimate of where we're gonna land at the end of the year. Certainly there's variables you can't anticipate, like somebody giving their 2 weeks notice and retiring. Does anyone have any questions or comments on this forecast? We're going to be finishing pretty high in the project fees earned, mostly because of the Amazon project, where somebody negotiated a pretty good project fee on that for us. Mr. Gabriel,
Thanks, Mike.
you want?
Hey, I would like to take a second on this and point out to the board members. In the middle of the revenue column, you'll see distributions from VIP, Niagara Industrial, Incubator Associates, and Niagara Industrial Suites. Just for informational purposes, the VIP MTF is the building they're sitting in. It's the agency's building we own it 100%. The other two buildings below are buildings that we are over near the airport, which we are 50% owners with the NFTA. We were anticipating in 24 to take a distribution out of both of those buildings. It looks as though we probably won't for a couple of reasons. Number one, obviously, forecasted income for us in 24 is fairly good, so we don't really have a shortfall in any way, shape, or form. But more importantly, as you may recall, we're going to, and we have now actually, they're finally finished. We've gotten back basically 60+% of the building over where GHD was. Now GHD build out is completed over there. We have a new tenant, but we still have close to 30,000 square feet of unleased space, which we're going to be actively trying to find tenants for. But in the meantime, our projections, as you'll see later on when we go through the other three groups, aren't going to be what we anticipate. So to be extraordinarily, safe and conservative, we're holding off on those distributions just in case there tends to be either operational shortfall or any other issues that may come up on those buildings. But we do have them. We have 100 from both the NIIA and the other GHD buildings budgeted for 2025. We do anticipate trying to fill these buildings during some period of the upcoming year.
All right, the buildings Mark was talking about, the next item after the budget is, I have projections for those three buildings in there. So he's talking about profit distributions from those buildings. Did you want to move on? We can move on to the next turquoise colored.
Can I,
Yep.
real quick, I know that, actually, I don't know that, but my assumption is that this isn't required for the budget process, but, I feel like we talked about this last year. We don't have any balance sheet information for any of these entities. Is it maintained? Are there balance sheets that are maintained?
Yeah, every month, every month in your package for the financial statements they give you, there's a balance sheet in that. So if you look in your package from today, there's the income statement, and then on the back of it is the balance sheet. As of September 30th.
Okay.
Yes. I will make a note to myself to put a copy of the balance sheet in for next year's budget reports for you.
I don't necessarily know that it needs to be for budget, I mean, I just feel like for these various entities,
Sure,
sometimes it would be helpful.
sure. So, are we ready to go to the budget for 25 budget for the NCI IDA operating? Set up the same way as the other ones. First column is your 2024 budget. Then the forecasted for 2024. And then the 2025 budget. Behind the first page is just a little bit of summary. Actually talking about what Mark was talking about, the profit distributions from the 3 buildings that we own. And my estimate of the interest income. Page 2 of 6 is a summary of how I came up with our income, the forecasted through 2024 and the projection for 2025. And then some other administrative fees and miscellaneous income. So everything behind this page 1 of 6 is back up in summaries of how we came up with those numbers on the first page. So the first 2 pages is basically the income. And then pages 3 through 6 are all the itemization for the expenses. For the salaries, benefits, retirement, which is New York State retirement.
Okay, so real quick, on page 2 of 6.
Yep.
For instance, and maybe Mark can answer this. I see peak development partners here for anticipated fees of $71,750. Do we have any weighted? I don't know what the correct terminology would be, but do we have a weighted probability that like a project like this is gonna close? Because I know, for instance, Peak was having difficulty getting financing. I'm not sure where they are currently, but, and we're anticipating $72,000, just less than $72,000 worth of revenue off of that. And I don't know what the likelihood is that that's actually gonna ever get funded.
Good point. So that doesn't come, it just
Yeah,
reduces.
that's actually a great question, and it's, it's almost an internal scale based on feel.
Okay.
There's certain projects that when they come through the door are gonna go forward and it looks good, and then it ranges all the way from there to the very bottom, which is, better chance of catching a cold than closing scale. And each one of these is a different, and it can be based on just a bad project, financing, a bad idea, not be able to get financing. The nice ones are really nice projects that have great financing.
And that, I would imagine that's the vast majority of them. I mean, not too many projects get here that we approve that don't have a high probability of closing at some point.
You will rarely get one, and if it does end up having a very tough time closing, it's not for something we didn't.
No, not our
into beforehand. All of a sudden, like a financing issue comes up or something along those lines. for projected 2025, yeah, what's not included are, you know, a number of the newer projects that are in there for the second half of the year. So that is always a positive that gives us some wiggle room on some of these other projects. But yeah, it's you know, I wish we could be more definitive, but again, and I think you said it perfectly, most of the time staff really weeds these out really well. And if it's a project that really has no choice, we really try to discourage it to waste their time and our time in front of the board.
And I mean, and frankly, the agency may not have a good, clear picture into whether or not some of these projects are financeable, to be honest with you, or if there's something else going on with the potential developer that would preclude him from moving forward. So
Yeah, and then there's
it's not for lack of betting. I was just curious.
correct. And some of them, I mean, we remember years ago, there was there was a project, and I won't get too specific, but someone wanted to dump a bunch of sand in the front of the old Jen's building of Summit Mall and call it a beach. And that same person was looking to build a monorail from the Summit Mall to the Niagara Falls International Airport. So, you know, we're looking at that project and think, okay, this is not going to happen, you know, unless it's a cash deal. But so those are the types of things. We do come across some questionable projects, but they really won't get to you. As long as we can, you know, we can only do so much and get so much information, but based on what we get, staff will never allow it to get too far.
Excuse me, as Mark had explained earlier about how we come up with our budgeted project fee income is we average out the last 5 years. So if those projects didn't even exist, we would still have a number in there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so those are just ones we know about and hope are gonna come to a close. Under the other administrative fees, we have administrative fees for the two of the buildings that we have tenants in. We get a small amount of administrative fee from that, and then the Cataract Tourism administrative fees that we collect from grants that are distributed to the companies. There's only a few left. I think there's one on the agenda today, right, Andrew?
Cataract?
Yes.
Okay, then under miscellaneous income, we have salary and benefits reimbursement for project manager from the city of Niagara Falls. And then NCDC reimbursement for economic development. Mark, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. As part of some of the prior loan funds, once a loan fund that that the agency receives for purposes of providing loans to various companies, et cetera, when it basically recycles a specific amount of times, it becomes unrestricted funds. And once it hits unrestricted funds and goes into, and each one of these, as you can talk to Mike about, we have a dozen different accounts. Each one are earmarked based upon when the monies were received, and then it goes back in. But long story short, when one of these accounts now becomes unrestricted funds, that means we do not have to loan those funds out to companies. And in fact, recently we can use them for other economic development purposes. And it basically becomes agency funds for use for economic development purposes. So a couple of years ago, once we met with our underwriter consultant and our auditor, we had a really nice conversation with them. They approved and the fact that as long as those are used for economic development purposes, that it can be used by the agency from that fund. And what basically we do is we identify we don't use it all, but we identify a very specific amount of uses at the agency that fits into that particular definition, and probably go under that number significantly, and then basically that fund reimburses the agency for the expenses that they had related to those specific uses. So it's you know, it's basically, I guess, the way I explained it before was, you know, we have a number of accounts that basically can be used for economic development purposes, our operating accounts, eventually the NIIA and the other buildings, cataract, all these accounts. But basically they're in a number of different accounts throughout that whole group of bank accounts that Mike has. This has to be, in order to offset this, that's the way this has to be set up in this income and expense report, showing the transfer over from the NCDC arm fund to the NCIDA arm fund. So that's the majority of that. I think that's close to $150,000, and we try to budget that in there every year. And I believe there's still well over $1 million in those applicable accounts. So that gives us some, we can use those while not using our normal operating account, which is nice for future purposes.
Thank you, Mark. So the remaining pages are just detail of all the different expenses which fall under personnel, operating expenses, equipment and furnishings, marketing and development, and contractual services.
You know, I had an opportunity to look at, and I know we're in 2025, Mr. Chair, but, year-to-date 2024 and the forecast to end the year at $157,115 is pretty damn good for the agency. I think the staff and Andrea need to be commended, because every municipality and every quasi-government entity is going to be in the red at the end of this year and probably next year. So kudos to you guys. 157 is pretty good, especially after depreciation. So it's pretty good, folks.
Did you want to, what you want to do with these pages with the line items for the expenses? We can just look them over. I mean, it's all pretty self-explanatory. The only big, variances, like I was talking about with the salaries.
And I just wanted to remind the board, if I could just jump in for a second, Mike, this is obviously it's a very important part. Mike spends a lot of time on this, so does Andrea and myself, going through these line items afterwards and try to be as specific as possible. But we understand, and I know the board understands, that this is a working budget that is malleable, that obviously we're not locked into going over or under or whatever, but we have to make our best efforts. These best efforts, I think, are really done very well by staff, Andrea and Mike. And we'll go over to the county, and I know I feel very comfortable with the numbers we provided and how these estimates are being developed and giving over. But once it goes there and comes back, and I assume Mike has told you, it has to be reviewed by the county for 20 days, come back and finally approve it in November. That will be our baseline. But if something comes up and there's other issues that, maybe we don't have as much expense, or we have a little bit more income, those will work out the wash. This is not something that's locked in stone. It is something that is checklist item that has to be done as accurately as possible. And I again just want to commend both Mike and Andrea for this budget. It's well done, and I think this is something that, like I said, I think we will not have in over these years since we've implemented these different changes we've talked about. We haven't had one comment back from the county on it. So I think, again, my congratulations to both of them and this board.
Thank you, Mark. So as I mentioned, the only big variance would be under salaries, and then under contractual services, we had assistant director, which was Andrea. Then she was converted to the executive director, so now we have an extra line there under executive director, which wasn't budgeted for, but we are going to be under on the assistant director, so kind of a wash, but. So does anybody have anything they would want to be explained further in this budget? Okay. So those are the three budgets that we have to really vote on and then to recommend to the board in the board meeting, and they'll officially approve it. I'm saying I put emphasis on approved because it's approved and then it'll be adopted at the next meeting after the county's review. So the next three items are the three buildings Mark touched upon. We have 20 minutes, so we can either rifle through these or we can drag our feet to get us to the end of the meeting. The first one is it's called VIP MTF Incubator. That's the building that we're in now. We are fully occupied. And the tenants are what I call my outside tenants, only accessible through their own entrances are the MTF, and then the incubator ones are the ones that are down the hall here. They're accessible through our main entrance into our office. So we've got 4 tenants inside here and there's 4 tenants outside. And those tenants have been there a long time and they have no intention of leaving. In fact, they just contacted the one who's only been in there a few years. And I thought they would want to leave because they did have some concerns early on, but he wants a 5-year new lease and an extension for 5 more. So I'll be long gone before they leave. I'm 60 years old, but that's what I say.
Fine, you got 10 more years in you.
I do, but so quickly, this is just set up exactly the way the other ones were. Last year's budget forecast to the end of this year. We do really well on this building, really well.
Hey, Mike, just for informational purposes to the board, again, as a reminder, especially to some of your members, the building you're in was originally built in early 2000, and it was done through EDA grants, various loans along with a bank, and we moved from one of the buildings where we had an office over at 2045 or 2055 Niagara Boulevard over here. And just to let you know, right now, over these years, we no longer have any mortgage or outstanding debt on this. The only thing that there is, just to let you know, is there was a $1 million EDA grant way back in 2000, which helped us build this building. We don't have to pay it back. We don't have any options, except if we choose to sell the building, then we have to give them the money back. But other than that, this building is free and clear, so the income is really a nice supplement as it goes forward. We have been very lucky in this building over the years to have some long-term tenants. It is starting to get up there, so as you're going to see throughout this, there are going to be some substantial capital improvements that are going to be needed. We're going to need a couple more, 2 to 3 more heating units in 3 of the bigger units. We already put 2 in last year, and we have some parking lot work that's going to have to be done, not just repairs, but refacing and striping at our building here. It's starting to become unsightly. And this is a building that is 100% owned by the IDA, not in partnership with anyone else.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, that was, I was just going to mention that about the the HVAC replacement, I've got 30,000 in there, and parking lot repairs of 80,000. That comes out of our capital reserve fund. So that's really only a note on this building. Like I said, it's got great tenants, including the Niagara County Economic Development. Shares our offices here. So that's this building. Unless somebody has any questions. So the next one should be the blue cover. That's for 2055 Niagara Falls Boulevard. That's the one next to the airport there that is not, it's like across the parking lot and off to an angle. That was housed by GHD, our sole tenant there for several years. They put over $1 million worth of improvements in that building. And then once COVID hit, they were down from like 150 employees daily over there down to less than 10. And really have remained that way since then, which is amazing. They kept paying us $25,000 in rent. Finally, they got their act together over there. And as Mark mentioned earlier, if you didn't catch it, they're downsizing from 50,000 square feet to 13,600. And they're pretty close to being finished with that project now. It's like right smack dab in the center of the building. So now we've got empty space to the right of them. I don't have the exact square footage for you, but
The total square footage for the whole space is just about 29,000.
yes, thank you.
That was the base.
So when they started with this renovation several months ago, gosh, first quarter of this year, they were able to get out of units 1 and 2 to the far left of the building, and now we've got a new tenant in there, Bearco Inc. They manufacture filters for HVAC and that type of thing. And they're in units 1 and 2, like I said, and GHD was still occupying the next unit over from them, but they do want it. And I just spoke to them a couple weeks ago, and they are definitely interested in moving into unit 3. So we'll have that occupied. Other than that, well, we do have a big chunk that's unoccupied at the moment, which is since I've been in this position with the agency, that building's been fully occupied for the first time ever. It won't be. But from what I hear, we won't have any trouble filling that. In fact, we've had quite a few inquiries about the building. So, again, with the...
Thanks, Jason, this is the building that, if the board may recall, that we got into a little bit of, let's call it a discussion with their leasing group.
Yeah, you and I had some good discussions on that.
Absolutely. And what it ended up happening is they kept changing and moving the goalposts back and back and back. And finally, they had no leverage whatsoever. After discussing with you, we just called the term of the lease, of which got their chief financial officer for the multinational group to contact us directly. We were able to work out terms way better than what we really would have done. And because of this one individual who was later, by the way, let go by the company, because of it, I don't say because of this, but we assume it had something to do with this or her personality. We were able to pick up an additional $140,000 in income during 2024 that we were not even thinking about receiving for this year, which is wonderful because, and that's one of the reasons we aren't looking to take a distribution in 2024, because we anticipate having to do some significant build outs inside the building for new tenants in the next 6 to 12 months. So this additional income helps offset a lot of that expense that's anticipated, which is great. And we, but again, for 2024, we're blessed that we don't necessarily need that administrative fee for the year. So it'll be able to be utilized for build-out purposes.
Yeah, provided for a little bit of a sinking fund should we need it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so as Mark mentioned, we only the rent, we only budgeted 62,000 for 2024, and we ended up with almost 250,000 because they took the time. The only other thing a significant note would be, down there, parking lot repairs for that building as well, and then building renovations. So, if nobody has any questions on that, we'll go on to the last item. Checking again.
Hey, Mike, if I could just
Yep.
chime in real quick before you start on page 45.
Yep.
Just information, and this is something to keep in mind long term, and I just wanted to get it out early. So 2045 and 2055 are those buildings which we are 50% partners with the NFTA. So we're administrator, we have agreements, so we administer it for, as per the agreement, and we make the calls and we share all income that's generated by the buildings and expenses. Both of these buildings, to go back real quick in history, were built in the 1980s and each had, I believe, 25-year leases. There's a whole, you don't want to go back because there was private investors which were bought out. There are various things over the years, but long story short, the 25-year lease had run and was extended for another 25 years. Just for the board's information, both these buildings, there are no more leases to extend. So basically, in 2031, maybe 32, coming in, which is now a little bit more around the corner than I anticipated, both these buildings will revert back to the NFTA, and this income stream will. So when we, obviously, we'd love this to stay forever, but the NFTA obviously owns and continues to own the underlying lease, or underlying property. We lease it as part of their agreement, and both of these buildings would actually revert back if the NFTA pays attention to at the end of 31 or 32, which I assume they will.
I gotta be honest, I mean, having a little bit of insight into I'm not gonna say dysfunction, but the lack of function in the NFTA, they may not want to pick up the maintenance and or any of the other things on there. This might be, I mean, if we wanted to extend that agreement beyond I believe you said 2032, there might be some motivation on their part not to pick up the extra burden, so to speak, from an administrative standpoint and extending that agreement out. I mean, just me talking, we're looking at since 2019 NOI on this building of north of $1 million. I don't know where if that sits someplace, if that gets distributed out, but I mean, if we're averaging, a little north of $200,000 a year, it may behoove us to try to extend that agreement out if we wanted to. Because I don't know that the NFTA would be excited about picking up that unless they have a use for the building in their mind someplace, which I can't believe they've got the foresight to do.
Unless they get expansion of air service.
Well,
That's the big point.
yeah,
We were lucky to get Allegiance, and then we had the other one, what happened to that one.
yeah.
And I'm not sure. The third parking lot, the only thing that grows in the third parking lot is weeds now.
Yeah, exactly. It's a forest.
It was too bad because with the second airline there, we filled that third parking lot up virtually during the heavy seasons there. It wasn't a parking place. So,
I
I don't know.
don't know.
I agree with you. I think it's a good time to maybe reach out and.
So,
see
hey,
if
do you
we
want to
wanna
extend this
that
for an
lease.
extra?
Let's see.
If we want to.
I'm not worried about 2031. Matter of fact, I'm not even worried about 2028. But, so go for it, 2050 for the rest of it.
Again, just a thought process. I mean, if we want to try to perpetuate this income stream, just a thought.
No, that sounds like a good plan. It can't hurt, let's put it that way.
No, I think you should reach out.
Okay, so I forgot where we were. We're on to the last building over there, 2045 Niagara Falls Boulevard. That sits exactly parallel with the boulevard. And in there there's a hot dog guy, there's granite, the granite shop, which occupies quite a significant footprint of that building. And I'm trying to force another unit down their throat because it's right next to where they are. And I think they're gonna take it, so, because we did have one tenant move out, Chichester, they were like an exotic fur seller, they're outfit out of Canada, in fact, all over the world. And they moved out at the end of May. And the granite shop took over one of the units immediately next to them. Then we have a hair salon in there, tattoo guy, and then one empty unit, another empty unit, one where the granite shop was in, and then when they took over that other spot, they moved out of that because it didn't make any sense. So we do have some vacancies over there at the moment. In fact, I have one tenant that's moving out at the end of this month. And that's about 6,000 square feet there. But I don't think we should have any trouble finding a new tenant for that space. The only other significant thing over there, believe it or not, is more parking lot repairs that we're anticipating, hopefully beginning of the year. Okay, well, I thank you for your, Mark, do you have any other comments on that?
Here's the only thing is, again, the same thing in regards to the projections for 2025 budget is that, based upon some of these tenancies, some of the tenants leaving, together with the parking lot repair, we thought for 2024, is not making the distribution, keeping those funds for what other build outs or any other costs that may incur or lack of income due to those workouts. I mean, we anticipate being able to do it, fill those spots pretty quickly, but it's always, you'd rather handle these conservatively. The money's not going anywhere, it's still in our accounts. So if we have to make a larger distribution the following year, that's fine, but once it's out the door, it's out the door. So I thought the conservative nature of the budget was right in line the way the rest of the budget was prepared. So no, that's all I have. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, so if anybody has any questions now, or maybe after the fact, you can feel free to call me or send me an email, and we'll work it out.
All right, do we need to recommend that these budgets are forwarded up to the board as a whole, correct? All right, we need,
Well, I think they would be, at the board meeting, it'll have to be done individually, correct? Mark?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So, for the purposes of our meeting, I think we could probably do it in one action, if everybody's comfortable with that. All right, so, can I get a motion to? What, Mark?
No, you're correct. You can do it as one motion.
Okay, so can I get a motion to forward all three, the NCIDA, NCDC, and NADC budgets for 2025 to the board as a whole?
Yeah.
I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Nay, not hearing none. They are all recommended to be forwarded to the board as a whole. I will move to adjourn our meeting, and so we're coming up on time. All right, so you don't have the authority here.
Don't.
Can I get a second? All those in favor? All right, we got our adjourned.
Hey.
I asked you to.